Hey, having worked across multiple types of company, large corporations, smaller independent companies, and even mid-size, and even now going on my own journey and starting my own business, there's the values and direction is key areas that people just don't focus on. And it can lead to all sorts of problems, things like staff retention, people walking out the door, confusion, frustration, um, just people feeling generally lost. Now, I'm going to tackle each one of these things separately. So the first is values. Now, often what I've seen happen is that companies set these values and they're just buzzwords, something fancy that looks nice on their website, fancy to their clients or attracts their employees. But the reality is they don't live and breathe those values, and they should. Think about your own values in your own life. We have them, but we generally don't tend to explore them. We think we know what our values are, but when we really go into it, we find out some of those values are slightly different. And values can change depending on the period of life that you're in. So it might be that money's an important driver for you at the moment, or family, and those things may switch around. But what tends to happen is companies set these buzzwords for their values, and that's not right. So recently I actually attended this jury service where I was fortunate enough to be actually looking at some students who were interns in companies, but they were doing their thesis at university. And what they were doing is they're in the world of HR, and they looked at basically their companies and they picked a subject around HR for their thesis. And I was there really to just judge them on their English level skills. Interestingly, as part of those conversations, we could ask technical questions and just to see their subject matter expertise. And a question I often asked, just out of curiosity, because they were from all different companies, and I asked them about the values that those companies were representing. Now, some of them didn't actually know what they were. Some of them knew exactly what they were. But then when I asked, does the company live up to those values? They thought they needed to say yes. But when I dug a little bit deeper, the companies didn't. They were just trying to say those things. One of them was working for a recruitment company. And essentially, that was just buzzwords that they wanted to get those employees on board. Now, this is such a dangerous game to play because you're employing people, you're hiring people on something that you're not actually living and breathing. And the reality is you're saying your company is something and it's not. And that can be very confusing for people because they're hired in a company believing that they're going to someone that believes in a certain value, and that might be aligned with their value, and that's why they've chosen it. But then the reality, when the covers come off, their values are all messed up and they actually want something else. Now, values in themselves, everyone should actually understand what the values are of those companies and try to align themselves with those, or see themselves in there, or support those values. You can have your own values for sure, but the company needs to have values, be clear on what they are, and be honest about them. Don't just say buzzwords because it seems fancy to put on your website. Truly understand what is important to you as a company and just put that on there. And then that will attract the right people to serve that type of company. Don't try and hide behind these buzzwords. It just doesn't work. It's a short-term game. Now, the problem I found in big companies, big corporations, is those values tend to get diluted. What do I mean by that? So somewhere, some high up person set these values, or some department. Now, the reality is I go to work every day and I didn't know what those values were. They often talked about a mission statement. I couldn't tell you that that was actually part of my day-to-day job. But having values and knowing the priority of those values really can help any business, because sometimes those values can be in conflict with each other. So when there's a hard decision to be made about the business or the direction that you're going to take, or something that's difficult, then you might have to choose. And if you know which one you prioritize, then you make that choice based on that priority order. Now, similarly, how many companies have you ever worked at that say they have a direction and they don't. Again, I've worked in big corporations. So a good example of this is one of the companies I worked for. I was working in a project team that was looking after finance area. Now, we all flew to London and we had a 3-day workshop where we had all the people from the finance area and the project team basically working together to define what we were going to focus on for the next 3 months. Now, what happened is the head of finance started talking. He gave his vision for the next 3 months. And then there was 3 other managers underneath him, all gave their vision for the next 3 months. And I sat there and I felt a bit stupid because it seemed like I was the only one that realized that all of them had a different vision. They were basically going in different directions. Yeah, you might fall under the finance banner, but they all wanted different things. Now, for the next 3 months, as a project team, we were supposed to be supporting this area. How can you do that? You're basically rowing in different directions, and that's so confusing. And then when resource becomes a conflict or budget or something like that, where do you put your emphasis? And it just seemed nuts to me. Now, even in smaller companies that I've worked at, they say they have a direction, but they don't. They just change direction every single week. And it becomes confusing and frustrating for those employees who work there. They don't understand what they're supposed to be doing. Now, if you had a direction, again, it will really help you when those decisions come up. Should I take this client on? Should I take this opportunity? If it isn't aligned to your direction, then you can say no, and you should be saying no. The problem in most companies, they just see the next shiny thing and go, oh, there's a client, I'm going to take it on board, without fully assessing, is that aligned with the type of direction? Now, I've seen companies do this really well, and I'm aware of one that basically had pretty much a mission statement of what they wanted to be. And the reality is all their staff understood what that was to do with. So when they were looking at new systems put in place, new processes to change, new clients, they could always ask themselves, okay, does that align with our vision, our direction? And if it didn't, you have a good case to say to the management, okay, look, you're saying this client, but I don't think this fits. And it doesn't need to be an argument. You're all supposed to be working together. That's the point of direction. So if you're seeing that in your company, you're seeing loads of people walking out the door, lots of conflict, people not knowing what they're doing, confusion, really quality people working and starting to get angry. Look at these 2 things. Are your values there? Do you have them? Are they actually true in terms of what you're trying to do? And what's your direction? Is that clear? And does everyone understand what it is? And is it changing constantly? If it is, it needs to be looked at desperately.